And I believe the main goal for folks that are incarcerated, every one of us, is to get out and stay out.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of 32 and Beyond. And you're certainly going to want to pass this one along. This interview, as they all are, very special and near and dear to my heart, with Kerry Thomas, somebody who taught me how to really look at life differently through the optics of sports. Former BSU basketball player, college student, father, so many hats. Now, he's working with the seroprotect, bringing awareness to some really hard-hitting topics that, I gotta tell you, I really do appreciate the value he brings to the community. Always have, always will. He's my mentor. He's somebody I respect and looked up to. And I am just really excited to share this particular interview with you. So let's go. And so today is going to be a good one just because you and I did travel a lot on the same journey, the same path. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously we definitely took our different lefts and rights, but overall we stuck to the same theme, which was really trying to add value to the community around us, because whether we like it or not, prison is a community.
You bet. You bet.
And that really did help teach us a lot of things that we obviously didn't have dialed in when we were younger. Mm-hmm. And obviously your journey, you know, before prison and obviously while you were inside, I think that's where the value really comes into, you know, the optics of that is pretty, I got to tell you, I've always looked up to you. You know, he was my coach.
I knew you were going to bring that out.
Yeah.
I know.
God bless him. But I learned a lot from you as a coach, because believe it or not, you know, I never really did have that dad figure was very much, you know, hammer and nail. And so you taught me a discipline, whereas, you know, there's many times playing basketball that I wasn't that great at, and that's okay. But you helped me really focus on what I was good at in that arena. Yeah, you may not be a scorer, but you can be somebody that can maybe really, you know, get those 5 fouls, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. But you used me, and you were smart enough to use me and my talents the best way you possibly could, as a coach should. Mm-hmm. And so we'll definitely talk a little bit about that. Sports, I think, is a genius idea on, you know, really keeping youngsters focused and out of trouble, and does teach a discipline that most people just don't realize, man. I got to tell you, talk about therapy.
Right.
So I think it's going to be fun to do that, but I want to give it to you real quick. So tell us a little bit about, you know, Kerry before prison a little bit, just to sort of give us an idea of who you were. And then, so we'll just kind of dive into the next thing on, so like, you know, what did that look like when you went inside? So
you bet. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And,
100%.
You know, to spend a little time. We don't get a chance to see each other very often. And so I always appreciate an opportunity to come out and chop it up a little bit. But as you mentioned, I'm Kerry Thomas. I'm also more, other than just being a survivor of incarceration or returning citizen, like, which one of the terms I really like.
Right.
You know, and I'm also a father. I'm a grandfather. I'm a son. I'm an employee.
Right, many things.
An employer. And also, I like to say in a lot of situations, I'm a friend. I'm actively involved in the mentor program. But I'm also a person who's living with HIV.
Right.
And that I bring that up now because of the context of this conversation.
Right.
And being incarcerated, because I was incarcerated under Idaho Code 39608, something that I'm sure that most guys who are incarcerated, we know the statute that we're incarcerated under.
Right.
39608, which is the criminalization of people living with HIV.
Right.
And so under that context, going into prison, that was the charge. And as you know, there was a ton of, you know, media attention over that, and a lot of, but it also shaped the way that I did my time.
Right.
You know, and so I've been back in the community for about almost a year and a half.
Nice.
Working and doing all the things and
doing good
things that we'll talk a little bit in more detail.
For sure.
But I think I'd want to lay the foundation of that when you say, who is Kerry? I'm all those things, you know.
Yeah.
More than anything, I'm a person who's dead set that we can do something different as far as corrections is concerned.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of who Kerry Thomas is.
Right.
So yeah, I'm ready.
And you're doing good stuff, and I'm obviously I'm proud of you, and I know that a lot of people, they need to see that there can be success, and it's just not instantaneous. There's a grind at it. There's a process that goes into that, and you could have easily taken a different path, but you didn't. And I think that, unfortunately, when you did wind up coming to prison, they really did, they labeled you just this really bad person that did this really bad thing. And so everybody has the optics of that's what that looked like. And that really just simply wasn't the case. And and until they actually got a chance to sit down with you and talk to you, and we obviously through programs, we really got a chance, and obviously sports, we got a chance to really figure out who each other were. And I got to tell you, that it just really blew me away about how they villainize people sometimes. And I think in this particular, case, you really do have, a lot of, you have this drive now that you're really making awareness to the community about, what's going on in the world of HIV, and obviously bringing awareness to the community, because really when you think about it, it's just this giant dogma that comes along with it. Unfortunately, everybody just cringes.
You're bad.
And it's just something that is so old and outdated information is really what it comes down to.
I'm glad you phrased it like that, because anyone who's incarcerated goes through, I don't care if it's county jail.
100%.
When you're booked, the booking process is humiliating.
Right.
And then it extends when we get to incarceration. When you go through RDU. Right. I think I always joke that deliberately that first jumpsuit supposed to not fit.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever seen one that fits.
Well, if you listen to Chris's, he talked about it being 5 sizes too big.
Exactly. And for me, it was 5 sizes too small.
That's funny.
What do they call those, capris or something like
exactly.
that? And then the top, of course, is the wrong size as well.
Yeah, so it's so humiliating.
And I think that's
by design almost.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that's intentional.
Yeah.
But with all that going on, and then to come there with already exposed as far as the media.
Right.
I'd be lying if there wasn't a little bit of apprehension, a little bit of fear that goes in with that. Oh my goodness, what have I got myself into?
Right.
And then I think most of the folks that you've interviewed, one common thing I hear people say is that initial, how am I going to survive?
Right.
It's not about what's going to happen here or there, or if I'm going to go to college, or if I'm going to get involved in a program, if I'm playing intramural sports.
Sure.
Is how am I going to live that day?
Right.
And so my sentence was 30 years. And I remember my family members, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about family.
For sure, have to.
But I remember one of my family members said, oh my God, how are you gonna do 30 years?
Right.
And I thought about it, you're right. I can't do 30 years. But I'm not being asked to do 30 years. I'm asked to do this one moment.
Right.
And I had to break it down to this one breath.
Right.
This one heartbeat. And then then the next heartbeat, the next heartbeat.
I know.
And God willing, I'll have another one after that.
Right. And then just keep going.
And I think it's so important that people understand that initial part when folks arrive in the system, that's the point that we really got to let them know that that it's going to be okay.
Right.
There are some options.
Right.
Because that initial internal fear, I'll tell you, I'll never forget that.
Yeah. And so now, just to paint a picture, because I don't know, were you a shit stick growing up?
No, I would say no.
And so, if memory serves, you were involved in some pretty good stuff before you came in.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about that, so people can know, hey, you don't have to be living a life of just running and gunning and kill, steal, destroy.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you find yourself doing 30 years.
Right. I think I was extraordinarily blessed in that, my parents, who both passed away now, and they were married for, I think 45 years.
Wow.
Actually, they'll kick me on that. It was 50 years. I remember their 50th anniversary, and both of them were college graduates.
Nice.
I had a great opportunity. My dad was in the military, so I was able to travel. When he retired, we moved to Idaho.
Okay.
And got involved with school. Idaho was just so incredibly new.
Okay.
At that time, new for me.
Right.
So I didn't really know what to expect.
Right.
And so I was able to get involved in sports. It was a Mr. Hansen, was the coach teacher that really said, you know what, if you improve your skill in this area, you can get your college paid for.
Oh, nice.
I was
yeah.
And I was probably 13, 14 years old when that happened.
Nice.
So yeah, I had many opportunities to what people would say were successful, you know, and I had the opportunity to do a lot of things. College education is very important.
Right.
And the opportunity to be a scholarship athlete equally comes with a lot of blessings.
Right. 100%.
Right. And so that's the background that I grew up in. Was I a shit stick? Depends on who you ask, I suppose.
Well, I mean, probably no different than anybody else traveling that journey.
Right.
Right.
But as far as the shit stick as in a prior record, I didn't have one.
Right. And you did play with BSU.
I did. But some of the best time, I'm happy that I'm kind of bummed that they lost in the Fiesta Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
But college is an amazing opportunity, whether or not you're a scholarship athlete or not. It's the opportunity to learn, to be around your peers at that age. I mean, at 18 to 22 years old, it's such a huge opportunity.
Yeah, that's insane. And so so having that experience of, playing for BSU and all that stuff that comes along with it, a lot of accolades because you were obviously you knew what you were doing. They don't just pick up people on the sideline.
Right.
Like, yeah, you want to play. So you knew what you were doing. And so that's a different perspective. And so all that stuff going on in your life, and next thing you know, everything hits a brick wall. And so, a lot of people, I think it's important that they understand is that, every single choice we make, I mean, that right turn can end up breaking a nose.
You bet.
You don't know what the next thing is. And so that's always being very cognitive of what's the next thing instead of just sort of yeehaw. And I'm not saying you're a yeehaw, but at the end of the day, now we have 30 years.
Correct.
That changes everything.
And I like to frame it as, but I didn't make a mistake. I made a choice.
Nice.
So regardless of the circumstances of my charge, and this is not the forum to debate whether or not the statute.
100%.
Regardless of all that, whatever there was something in my life, I put myself in that situation.
Right on.
With and made a choice.
Right.
Now for me that's freeing.
Right.
Because if I made that choice, I can make different choices.
I put myself in Circle K with a 32 Belgium automatic. That's my choice.
Right.
And I could now, like you said, I can do something different.
Right. So it's not in a sense of sadness for me.
Right.
It's a sense of awareness and a sense of empowerment. If I can claim it, I said, yeah, that's a choice I made in this circumstance.
Right on.
Then I can do something different.
I like that.
I can make, and that's kind of how I started to get a little bit of momentum.
Nice.
And and I'll be honest, I didn't a 30-year sentence. I truly didn't believe I was going to get out. That wasn't the thought. And I think most folks that are in there's that shred of hope.
Right.
But it's like, how am I going to live that breath today? How am I going to do? What am I going to do today?
That's good.
Is what I focused on.
Yeah.
Where my ramen noodles coming from?
Right.
All those things are more important. That hey, 30 years from now, I'm gonna be out.
Yeah.
That's not the.
That's the best thing because that survival mechanism kicks in. So now we're doing time. And now we're in it. And then, and so when you were first introduced to what prison life was, because you had no idea, neither did I.
Sure.
And how old were you?
Let me see. I would have been. Nigel was, and it's interesting. I count my years by the age of my son.
That's fun.
And so right, wrong, good or bad. That's just
that's
how.
Cool.
So I'm thinking, well, Nigel was 14. So I'm 30 years older than him. So I was 44.
Okay. So when you first came in, you were. How old were you when you first came in?
Oh, I think that's interesting to track that back. So I think that when I'm looking at HIV criminalization, I rolled that back. I tested positive in 1988.
Same, and that's when I fell.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I never really connected that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's important to frame it in that sense because I say that soon that in October of 88, that's when criminalization for me started.
Oh, gotcha.
You see what I mean? So I look at it as the broader picture.
That's weird, isn't it? Because all of a sudden you became a felony.
Well, and unaware of that, the circumstances or the process had already started.
Right.
And so it was in 2008 that I picked up this
2008.
Right. So
okay.
This particular charge.
Right.
And
that's when we met. Pretty much, give or take.
Right.
Gotcha. And I remember that because 2008, a lot of us what was 2008? If I remember correctly, we were going out of state to Oklahoma too at some point.
Right. You did go out of state. That's right. You went to Minnesota or something like that as well.
Minnesota in 95 and then Oklahoma in 2008. Now,
I didn't know about Oklahoma.
Was 2008 your second time back or your first time?
It was my second.
Second time. And so what year did you fall the very first time?
That would have been... Or when would that have been?
That was the early 90s.
Right,
I know that.
Right. It would have been shortly after my diagnosis.
Okay.
Correct.
So right around 90
correct-ish. Correct.
And so now that journey, when you first when you walked in brand new, did anything for you happen that was maybe something you chalk up as maybe a pivotal moment, some sort of eye-opening thing that was like, I need to start to make better decisions or maybe make better choices, like you said, to where instead of just sort of, because again, I know that we can obviously talk about the fact that, you walked into a buzzsaw of something you didn't even know about. Next thing you know, you're doing time. And there's plenty of people that would say your situation is very unfair. And boy, howdy, we'd like to correct all that stuff. But here you are, no matter what.
Right.
What do you do with that time? Do you get bitter? Do you get mad? Do you get sucked up to where you just say, I'm going to just sit in my cell until I get out? I don't know. What do you do when you're walking into a situation like that?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question, because I think, and again, I'd be lying if I said from day one, I'm gonna be the best version of myself.
Sure.
Like I strongly believe, like for me, and if guys are anything like me, you're just trying to figure the whole thing out.
Right.
I'm just wondering.
And you're terrified. I was.
What am I going to eat? Is the guy behind me going to hit me in the back of the head?
Right.
And I don't get caught. I didn't get caught up in the whole fair aspect of things. I think that I joke around for my personal self-talk is fair. That's where you get the oversized, vegetables and the farm animals. That's not fair.
Yeah, right.
The fair has nothing to do with it.
Amen.
And so when you ask about being bitter and those type of things, I didn't really have time for that.
Right. And neither did Chris. And I thought that's funny. He was just like, I'm just trying to make it through the next day.
Right. I didn't have the wherewithal or the time or the emotional energy to put in something not being fair.
Right. Gotcha.
And I just wanted to.
Here we are.
Right. And I wanted to figure it out. Number one, how am I going to live? And we talk about all the different models that we're talking about, our basic survival needs. Yeah. That's where I was at.
Right.
The very bottom of Maslow's
hierarchy.
Yeah. I just wanted to breathe in and out.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out and navigate what's going on around this place. And for me, it was a struggle early on. And, I remember the prison environment, there's the racism aspect of it. Yeah. There's now I'm a person and that people perceived had AIDS.
And they were very much like, oh my God, you can't go near him.
Correct. So
you can't.
Right. So that's whether from correctional officers, whether it's from the person I'm selling with, all of that dynamic.
Right.
So early on, I had to be part educator to let people know you're going to be okay to touch that doorknob. It's okay.
And I can actually remember talking to you about that because I wasn't going to guess. I simply said, hey, so in playing sports together and everything else, what would it take in order for me to catch HIV? And you pretty much just said you'd have to basically inject my blood into you.
Correct.
And I'm like, why don't they say that?
Right. And that's such a weird dynamic to be there. Because again, I'm worried about my personal safety all the same time. And this is not something unique to me. I think folks with lived experience, we all got to grow through that. We're working with people. Is like, hey, I have the fears. I'm uncertain about many things in life.
Right.
We got to exhale.
Right.
And give HIV 101.
Right.
Information that's common. Sure. But there's that dynamic. And it's like, well, okay, before I can be safe, I have to make sure that other people are safe. And that's so that was the process with that. I mean, there's that I remember one of the first conversation, because you remember on the yard where you go by the cages, the dog runs. Right. And someone's like, hey, nigger on the tier. All that stuff. So, now I got to deal with that as well. 100%. So all that's going on. And so for me, no, it wasn't that I was had the bandwidth to think long term about how I was going to change my life. Right. I just wanted to live. And so, but at some point in time, that changes when you sort of get traction. You're doing the time. You're sort of dialing some things in. You've gotten the conversations out there. People aren't treating you like you got leprosy as much. Right. Correct. And so eventually you end up saying, okay, so now I can start to turn the page and get to where I need to, improve, because you're here, ready or not. You might as well take advantage of it. Right. Right. And I think for me, it was more, I just wanted to live better. Nice. If I'm going to be here for the extended part of the time, I don't want to live around a bunch of knuckleheads. Right. I want a part of safety. I want to start building a community. Although I didn't have that term, I didn't think of a community model, those type of things. Right. I just want to be around folks that were like-minded, that shared common interests, that had goals. Right. the same thing I do
Right.
that we do in the community anyway.
Right.
And so that's where I looked at education was a big part of what I got involved in early on. And I didn't have access to a lot of resources. So what do you do when you don't have a resource? You get a job.
Right.
So by
Gotta survive.
Right. All those basic needs,
Right.
were like kind of the checkbox, if you were. Let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. And over time, start building relationships with people.
Sure.
And you brought up sports. I think that prior to incarceration, during incarceration, the value of athletics or organized athletics is huge.
Right.
Because it does build camaraderie, it does build those relationships. And so I went back to what I do best. Not saying the skill part of it, but building relationships.
Right.
I went to the gym, and I got involved with activities there. And then you meet people. The same. What's funny is because in the military, my dad, we traveled quite a bit, and so when we get to a new city, new town, or whatever, you go to the Y, and you
right, 100%.
They're going. You get picked on a team, and you go about the same.
Even
same
if
principle.
you get picked last,
right?
It don't matter.
Exactly. So it's the same adjustment tools that I had as a child.
Right.
Played out here as well.
Okay. And I thought that it was interesting too, because you did fall back on what you know best. Because at the end of the day, you were better than pretty much anybody on the yard. But the good news is that we weren't just around a lot of guys that didn't know what they were doing. There was a lot of talent on the yard. And I tell people is that, this day and age, talent is very, very sparse, and people are very much the PlayStation generation, and they don't put a lot of time or effort into extracurricular activities, with growing up in sports and things like that. And so when you won a championship inside for basketball, you actually did something because the talent you were up against, you had to work with people that weren't that talented, and you had to groom them into something that was at least passable. And in doing that, you had to be an authoritarian. You had to be a disciplinarian. You had to.
You're being extraordinarily kind.
Yeah, because there is the Bradley Thomases of the world that God bless his heart, that just couldn't dial it in. And I remember watching you lose your shit a few times over going, how am I going to get this guy to really just man up and rub some dirt on it and let's go.
Right.
And that's how life is.
Correct.
Life is very much, if you're going to let that hiccup you, boy, you're in serious trouble.
And I think that was real important. And it's interesting that you bring this topic up because it's able to transfer the way that a lot of the work that we do as mentors. Right. It's really similar is that we need that kind of release. We need to be able to yell, scream, and sports is able to do that. But a lot of the conflicts, what I would share with people is that keep it between the line. I don't care what you say in this little box of the basketball court or the boxing ring or the playing softball, whatever it is, get it out. Right. Get and be as big of a yahoo as you can possibly be. Right. But then when you leave, then go back and work on other skills. Right. And
let that translate.
Exactly. And I think that's where, and I said, you're being kind because looking back, I was probably a little aggressive sometimes. Yeah. I mean,
I got benched a couple times, so I know.
You went through the boot camp,
Sure. Yeah. And I didn't find anything. I thought it was unusual because, look at it this way. You got guys in prison that are 100% against authority. And yet we are being authoritarians because I was an umpire. I used to train the umpires and the referees and stuff. And so, now we're telling people that they need to police each other for all intents of, better, whether you like it or not. That's what we did. And so we allowed you to sort of be that authoritarian because we knew that somehow, some way that was going to make us better.
We're going to get to the end of the goal, which is to win a game. Right. And I think that's so important. You put that out because as leaders in the mentor, what IDOC wants to do in mentorship, sometimes you got to have those tough conversations. Yeah. It's the same process that we use all the time. And you're right. All of us have someone that we're accountable to. Right. To get us to the main goal. Right. And I believe the main goal for folks that are incarcerated, every one of us, is to get out and stay out. If that's the goal, sometimes you have to have those tough conversations, you bet. Yeah. And I know there's people in my life that were more than willing, and I was willing to allow them to have that tough conversation with me. And it wasn't, I think things have changed. The approach has changed quite a bit. Right. Some of the programs like the early CSC stuff was a different tone than it is today. I'm not saying good, bad, right, or wrong.
Right.
But I think that that it's important that we have those people in our lives, that I allow those people in my life. I looked at it as there probably was always people in my life that were very supportive.
Right.
That would have pointed me in the right direction.
Right.
Was I willing to listen?
Right on.
And that's what's changed.
Okay.
You see, and now I hear those voices. And when we talk about living with HIV, and I kind of, in my own recovery, I kind of trace it back to my relationship with my doctor.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that I kind of started journaling, and I was like, what things in my life are working?
Okay.
What relationships, if my personal relationships aren't doing well, are there any relationships in my life that are working well?
Okay.
And I said, well, yeah, my relationship with my doctor.
Okay.
Trust him completely.
Have to.
And then I said, well, what's unique about that situation and the situation or relationship over here?
Okay.
I wasn't always truthful.
Right.
I wasn't trusting, all those things that I wasn't doing, but with my doctor, I do. Mm-hmm. So I want to be successful.
Right.
I'm going to mirror that approach.
Okay.
In all my relationships.
That makes sense.
Whether it's a work relationship or whatever that may be. I'm not necessarily talking about relationship. I'm talking maybe the relationship I have with my parents, relationship I have with my sibling.
Nice.
What's the difference?
Right. That makes sense.
Empathy.
Yeah. Empathy. I like it.
I wasn't very empathetic to folks other than my doctor. Mm-hmm. And so to me, when you ask him what kind of changed,
sure,
that was a big part of it.
Is having empathy in relationships. That's good.
And like empathy in the sense of, for me, what empathy is, it's feeling with someone, not feeling for them, not feeling sad about them. It's being able to be comfortable in myself, to be vulnerable enough to feel with you.
That's funny too, because when I was talking to Chris, I was talking about sometimes we need to just sit in the mud with somebody that we care about.
Yeah.
It's not my job to fix it. It's not my job to make everything better.
Correct.
Although that's our reflex, because we're smart guys and we want to be able to help those. But our job sometimes, and the greatest honor that we can be given, is to just simply say, yeah, I'll just sit in the mud with you.
Just be present.
Just be present.
Right.
So that's good. I like that. And so then you talked about vulnerability, which is a conversation unto itself, because just like Brene Brown, God bless her, love it. And so finding out how to get traction in a thing that we were taught not to do.
Correct.
Because it was not just scary, but it wasn't manly or whatever that silly one else was.
Especially in the prison environment.
100%.
Especially. The last you want to do is appear to be soft.
Right.
And you know that. And especially in your situation, you and Chris, you were so incredibly young, that the idea of being soft was unacceptable.
It was scary because we felt like we would get taken advantage of.
Correct. But vulnerability is not about hard.
No.
Vulnerability is about being vulnerable is probably the hardest thing a person can do.
Right.
As what it means to be a man. To be an adult in that situation.
It. Yeah, that's good. And so you ended up. Obviously, you got out. You did some good things for me anyway. I learned a lot from you, and I think a lot of guys did, because that was a new perspective. Because did it feel different being the coach, not the player?
That's a great question. So I value what it means to be a coach, and I value to be. I remember my first basketball coach at Boise State, and he said sometimes the most important quality in a leader sometimes is fellowship, being willing to step back and be coachable,
right,
and be teachable. And so someone who's willing to be teachable, I really honor the fact that with all the yelling and screaming and all that kind of stuff, that I really honor the folks that were willing to be coached.
Right.
And that meant a great deal to me, is because we're trying again to get to that ultimate goal, in this case, just to win a tournament in prison.
Right. And we trusted you to get us there.
Correct.
And so if you said, hey, you got to box out, or you got to do this, you got to do that, I have to simply say, he knows what he's talking about. I'm going to trust that he's going to get us there. Now translate that into everyday life. Those people that are around, our mentors, our family members, trust those that have made decisions that obviously got them where they're at, to be vulnerable and accepting enough to simply say, well, okay, I guess I'll trust that you got it. You got us on the right path.
Exactly. And I think as naturally, we're drawn to trust individuals that we believe can achieve it as well.
Right.
And so I think that authenticity is a big part of that.
Right.
The people that I trust, and authenticity is not perfection.
No.
the authenticity is about being real. I know this person. I know my mentor today.
Right.
If I call him up, he's going to give me the straight shot. He's going to be really authentic.
Sure.
And so, I want what he has.
Right.
All the treatment programs talk about, I want what this person has.
Right.
But I got to do what he's asking me to do.
Right.
When we're growing up, they'll say you want to be around A students, hang around A students.
Sure.
And I want to be an A student. And
Right.
that A student is freedom.
Right.
I just want to go home.
Right.
And so,
call.
so I have to start shaping my life to be coachable in order to achieve that ultimate goal.
Right. And that's it's funny too, because we are, for all intents and purposes, we are of the same tribe. Those guys that have been inside are still inside, are outside. We are all the same tribe. So when Kerry says something, it's going to carry a lot more weight than if Sean or somebody that doesn't know anything about time. So I think it's fun now to where when you're doing your everyday journey today, people still put a lot of stock and a lot of faith in the fact that you're going to lead them to the place, to the end, to the journey, to the finish line, or whatever that looks like.
Sure.
And so with that comes a lot of responsibility. And we don't squander that. We don't look at that and think, we don't take advantage of that. We look at that as something that's very much, we honor that.
It's a huge responsibility.
Huge responsibility. And so we don't take these kinds of conversations lightly. We know that there's family members out there right now
You bet.
that are scared to death that, Nick's coming home and after 20 years and how are we going to deal with this guy? And I don't know what we're going to do. And we don't want to mess it up. And we're excited as hell, but we also want to make sure that we're also mindful.
Very much so.
And so I'm kind of curious as to if you were to say something to them, what would you say?
To the family member.
Yeah, because you're coming home. What do we do?
Right. And I'm going to roll that tape back just a little bit because I think it's important. I think that I think you would agree, and I think that, first of all, I want to give kudos to Idaho Department of Corrections.
Well,
because
100%.
The mindset that's changed over the last 20, 25 years is incredible. Their willingness to see that we're more than simply, lock them.
Yeah.
And they're in a difficult situation. They don't decide who gets there, and they don't decide when you leave.
Right.
They're in charge of all the messy stuff.
Right.
It's like as a grandparent, I get to get my grandkids all sugared up and do all the stuff, then send them back home. IDOC stuck in the middle with some serious issues. I'm not making light of it at all.
No, they 100% they are.
And so their willingness to see a different way to do things, to allow people to mentor, to allow people to have that interaction is huge.
Right. Because they are the change agent.
Exactly. 100%. And underappreciated, I would argue, from both sides.
Right.
The court system all the way to residents that are there.
Right.
IDOC stuck in the middle.
Right.
But I think one of the things on that is real important is that we have to understand, we're talking about the families, it's important that re-entry starts on day one.
Right.
As soon as the individual gets to RDU,
I agree.
As a family member, that's when that communication has to start. Because if we're waiting for Kerry to, hey, by the way, I'm coming out in 30 days, all the things you're talking about are like a tidal wave that can overwhelm both parties.
Right.
And so I think what I would tell family members is that to get involved early doesn't mean, and definitely doesn't mean that financially, whatever you can do, I'm not talking about that, but really reach out to develop the resources on day one. And I don't care if the person's going to be there 2 years, 20 years, 30, doesn't matter.
Right.
You have to start that. The time frame might be different, but that's the conversation they have to have on the front end.
Well, we've seen that. I didn't have that. I don't know if you did or not, but we were in survival mode for quite a while.
Correct.
Till finally we decided to say, God, I got to start getting ready. And I just happened to want to start getting ready at year 5. And then all those years later, when I got out, it was seamless because I was already living my life inside as I would live my life outside.
Sure. And I would like to say there was one incident that happened. And for me, the days are so many. That's not one thing. It's a variety of things that I was receptive to.
Right.
And a lot of times it was emotions that I didn't even know what I was going to do. I didn't know what it meant.
Right.
I remember just saying, damn, that's,
powerful.
Right. And that's when I really started journaling a lot. And if I heard a quote or had a thought, I just write it down.
Smart.
At first I wouldn't. And then I say, I'll remember when I get back to the cell.
And then you forget.
I'll guarantee it. I'd walk in there, squirrel, and I'm chasing, running around and just lost. So I really started disciplining myself when I had it to write it down.
Nice.
And what that allowed me to do is it give me the opportunity to reflect. You bet. So I can't say there was one thing. There's multiple things that popped up. I spent some time in close custody.
Oh, okay.
And and you always hear about the mental health inside facilities and of course the violence against the front line.
Right.
But I remember going to sick call, and when you're in the back is middle of the night,
right,
or early morning, however you want to say it. I think it was like 2 a.m.
Right.
And I remember walking back after sick call, and I'm looking around because everyone has their lights on. I'm thinking, it's 2 and what do you guys have the lights on? And I realized that they have nothing except time to sit there, And I was like, man, is this what we want to do? And again, I didn't know. I didn't take that to mean, hey, I want to be involved in a mentor program.
Right. Of course.
It was that sense of sadness came to me. It's like, man, this is, I get it.
Yeah.
The overwhelming sense of oppression when people are in close custody was palatable to me.
And did that get you urgent?
I think it urgent in the sense that I haven't forgot it. Not urgent in the sense that I knew what to do.
No, but you knew that something needed to be done.
Correct.
And how can I participate in that change agent?
Correct.
And obviously at that stage, IDOC was still trying to figure out their stuff.
Exactly. And what's interesting, because you can have a video visit while you're in the back.
Right.
And
in the back being SEG.
Right.
Right.
And so, and it's just right in the middle of the tier. And I was visiting with a friend of mine, Gail, and she's talking, a great person. And a fight breaks out behind me.
Oh,
Didn't involve me.
Jeez.
And the fear that she had on her face, that got me.
And you had to really sort of control that situation, whereas you're not going to jump up and turn around and go get involved. You're just saying, I'm right here.
Right. My safety,
we're okay.
Her concern,
right.
And of course now that SL up, all the stuff, all the things are going off.
Visit's over.
Right. And I'm trying to tell her that I'm going to be okay and all that. And I remember, I'll never forget the look on her face, the fear. That's what we do to our families.
Right. Good call. And then Chris even said that too.
That's one of the components that changed for me. I'm like, I can't put Gail through this.
Right on. And it's funny too, because that's what Chris was saying about when his parents came to see him and he was in Max, and they're like, dude, what are you doing? You've already put us through so much. God bless him. But yet now it took that sort of recognition of, whoa, look at that pain. And that's where you're like, oh. Yeah. And that's why I've said the reason I make good choices is because I do not want to have a conversation with somebody and explain to them why I made this okay.
You bet.
That's never going to happen.
Now, how we get from here to there, that's a challenge.
Sure,
I don't know. I don't know what book or what program, but I think where I credit IDOC is they created, and I say for me, they gave me enough space to figure it out.
To fail or succeed.
Right. To figure it out.
Sure.
And people can say that it's restrictive or no. I'm a strong believer, and I think I'm an example, and I can point to many other examples. They just gave us a chance to figure it out. Did they make it easy? Were they coddling? No, they're not in the coddling business. But if you want to change, there's opportunities to change.
Well, I think the best thing to point to that, and for those, you were a part of the mentor program. I just happened to be that conversation with Blades, and then we wind up talking about what we're going to do. And the next thing it led to is, coffee time, and then let's jump onto the mentor program in conjunction with that. So sort of walking into the room with 6 other guys and saying, okay, so we're going to go ahead and architect this.
Right.
And here's the blueprints. And we didn't know what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. And then they pointing to me because I had facilitation, a past of facilitating. They're like, go. And I'm like, I'll do it a little bit, but I'm not going to take the reins on this thing 100% because you guys need to learn about that painful process too, because in growth, there is a shit show. It's just sitting around with a bunch of personalities and everybody had a different take on it.
And
but
it has to be that way.
Right. But that was IDOC saying, okay, let's see what you got.
Right.
And that just happened to be Blades' need to leave a legacy that really does. I mean, it resonates to this day.
Right. Isn't it amazing that when I'm asked about it, there was like 5 or 6 knuckleheads sitting in a day room. Yep. And now that same program is in every facility. In the state.
Yeah.
From a simple conversation.
Right. Gosh, that's nuts.
And that's the power of change. That's the power of.
And that's the power of what IDOC saw as there's value there.
Right.
Let's do that. And I guess I'll be talking to Bree Derrick at some point this month. And she went to, I think, Singapore and talked to them about the mentor program.
I bet. I did hear something about that.
And I thought that's so unusual that, shout out to them. IDOC is finally leading the way on some things that, it took them a lot of time.
Right.
A lot, these directors inherited a long lasting mentality of, we don't have time. Just put them in the cell.
Right.
And now they're like, yeah, that doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, we need to free up these beds by getting guys out.
Right.
And they can only get out as if they're making better decisions. So
Correct.
the commission can say, we see you.
And I think that's so important that folks that are getting out and that if I could, there's still many people that we know that are being housed out of state.
Right.
And so when I talk to someone's on parole or getting ready to go on parole, and I said, if I care about some of them men, which I do, right, I can't take up another bed.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I care about Mike and I want to be around his mom,
right,
I can't be one of those beds.
Right.
And we all see the list of parole violations every month that comes out the parole commission.
Okay.
If we just took off half of that list, those guys would be home.
Right. True. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
And that's a good call.
And it's not about parole being hard or all that other nonsense that we hear. And one of the benefits of the mentor program, it's allowing us to see for folks to come back in that are not even, I don't want to say, usually we say folks are doing well, they come back in. No, but doing well is such a, what does that mean?
Right.
I got a bill, I got a bill stacked up, or I have to pay for my grandkids.
Okay.
So am I doing well? So I don't like that term. But I think it's important that folks that are inside hear from you, from me, from anyone that's doing it.
Right.
Because normally we hear only the guys when they come back to RDU. And it's a very
slanted view.
And it's a different narrative.
Right.
Because I want guys to know you can do it. I mean, when I say do it, there's people, a small percentage of the population actually go to prison, right?
Yeah,
So
they say less than 3%.
Exactly. So there's many people
have got it figured out to a degree.
Be like them.
Yeah, that's all.
Right.
Be normal.
Right. That's it.
And it's funny too, because a lot of people unfortunately put nowadays, God bless it, we know that fake news exists.
Okay.
And so when people are coming in saying it's geared against you and it's all these things that really, no, I don't see that because I'm in it, and I was scared to death of all the stories. I thought, oh my God, this is going to suck.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, but here's the thing: if you're making good decisions, it is easy. I mean, yeah, you might still have to be accountable to a parole officer that he's got a personality and whatever that looks like, pay your monthlies and make good decisions. And they're eventually going to be like, yeah, I don't need to talk to you. I got 130 people on my caseload. I need to deal with them.
You talked about being teachable, being coachable.
There you go.
I see my relationship with my parole officer as such.
Right.
He's there to help me through this process.
Right.
He's a benefit for me, an ally of mine.
Right.
And so do I need to be 100% honest with him? Just like the doctor stuff. If I need to tell him when I'm struggling, just like the doctor.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Because they don't want you to go back, or at least I'm going to always assume that, because it's easy to go the negative.
Right.
I'm going to say that this guy wants me to succeed. That's why he's doing what he's doing. And that's the perfect picture. And so we'll just say that, obviously everybody's got a personality, and you get the bad ones with the good ones.
Sure.
And so, but at the end of the day, we're around somebody that's saying, man, I am Team Kerry. What are we doing?
And so you asked about what would I tell family members?
Sure.
It all starts inside to where the way that I would communicate with correctional officers. It wasn't, part of that was because I want to live my life the way I want to live my life when I get out.
Right.
When I go to my first job interview, am I slinging F-bombs?
Right.
Because so-and-so didn't give me, at Albertsons, am I freaking out because I couldn't, my toilet paper's not there and slinging F-bomb? No, I go have a conversation. So why?
So you learn to use your communication skills.
You have to. I offer folks that when you're inside right now, what's the next meaningful conversation that's going to get you home?
Right.
Talking to the parole commission.
Right.
And so how I talk to every single person has to be
grooming me for that.
Exactly.
Good call.
Because when it is stressful, when that situation sitting across from one where now it's on video,
right.
It is stressful. And you go back to what you do best. Why do we practice sitting screens over and over and over again?
Right.
Becomes second nature.
Right.
And so those little tiny
muscle reflex.
Yeah, those little tiny details will help you when you go to the board.
Right.
Will help the family member.
So that's good then. So you're saying get traction right now in figuring out how to communicate to each other and not sort of going to your fallback, which is F this, F that.
Correct.
Almost sounding like a 10-year-old throwing his fit, stomping his feet. I'm going to take my ball and go home.
Correct.
I mean, that might have worked when you were 10, but it's certainly not going to work when you're 40 in front of the board.
Exactly. And so that's my advice to folks, just is no matter how small it may seem, got to constantly remember, and it does take a level of hope, and IDOC is giving folks a lot of hope.
Right.
It does take a level of belief to live your life, and you touched on it. You wanted to live your life as if you weren't incarcerated.
Right. A member in community, but even though it was prison, I am a community member because this is my community.
Correct.
And that's my practice.
Correct. And to the smallest detail.
Right.
That was so when you say what's changed, I really believed in that. I didn't run up and down the breezeway saying, that I'm trying to, to live my life a certain way.
No. You just demonstrated by behavior.
Exactly.
And we say behavior doesn't lie. You can make your mouth say anything.
Right.
At some point in time, your behavior will catch up.
Every single time.
And you will 100% be giving yourself up.
Time.
Yeah. And I think that's good. And I think that, from what my perspective of what you did, you always, regardless of how you had to navigate it, you got to a place and point in time where people looked up to you and said, I remember even when you came back in 2008, I remember that you sought me out at some point in time and you were like, it was an unusual thing because I was doing the facilitating thing forever and a day. And it was kind of like you were looking for different pockets of knowledge, different pockets of perspective and, what's going on. And you showed a genuine interest in saying, I'm going to use this time to my advantage. I'm not going to let this time dictate kind of like the victim stance and all that stuff, because that would have been easy.
Right.
And you were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that because I need to grow through this. And, whatever that looks like, here we go. And so you used a lot of your skills and your tools as not just maybe a player or a coach or, somebody that's trying to, doing the journaling and learning how to really, gain perspective of what your future looks like and building those blocks. When you eventually got a point in time where somebody's saying, hey, you want to get out early? And you're like, excuse me? I'm kind of curious as to what because there was a process that went along with that.
You bet.
Because there was a lot of things that going on. Again, I don't know what however you want to touch on it, but I know that you were incarcerated for something that at the end of the day, they came to say, whoops. Yeah, he's got to go. He's not even supposed to be here. What's going on right now?
I called it. They told me they didn't want to renew my lease. It was time to go.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about. I currently work for the Zero Project.
Right.
And so
tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So Zero Project, we focus on criminalization and or ending criminalization, not just of HIV, but in general, but also more importantly on the way that we live our lives. And one of the things since I've been out, it's amazing how what I thought was just very narrow,
right?
The injustice that goes on in the world is across the board wherever. Right. And so it's not, for me, it's more than
it's not unique to us.
And I remember having that conversation and I was asked to participate. At first I was like, I'm good. I'm trying to, like you said, I'm just good. I think I was moved over to ICC at the time.
Right.
I'm finally getting settled. The last thing I wanted was more media attention to stir that all up again.
Right.
I'm finally able to exhale a little bit. I was working, I believe at that time I still might have been a tier janitor or whatever it was.
Okay.
And I was like, man, there's no way. I don't want to go through that all over again.
Sure.
But when Sean Strub is the founder, and when he came to talk to me, I remember telling, I don't think he's gone. I think it was Sergeant Thompson at the time.
Okay. And
I remember he's the one who escorted me there. And I'm going into visiting. I'm like, yeah, give me like 20 minutes and tell him I got to go.
Oh, gotcha.
10 hours later, 8 hours later, we sat there and talked and and I knew at that time I wanted to do something different in the area of HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
I just didn't know what it was.
Right.
But I knew I was all in.
Okay.
But for sure, I never for one moment thought, Sean's going to be my ticket out of here. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with how can I make my life better and the lives of folks that are also living with HIV better.
That makes sense.
So with all that going on, and then there was opportunities that they end up being on their board of directors. And so with that, there came a lot of opportunities that IDOC allowed me to do.
Right.
Allowed me to speak at conventions, to host webinars, all those things from incarceration.
Right.
So then the idea of that, hey, we can file a commutation and ask the Parole Commission if they want to modify this.
Okay.
And it really started getting a lot of momentum. And in the area of HIV and AIDS, I strongly want to give as much gratitude to the Parole Commission as I possibly can.
Sure.
Because they didn't, you know how the connotations work. They did not have to listen.
It doesn't exist. It's a unicorn.
And they were willing to have the conversation about the medical facts surrounding HIV.
Which is growth that is unexpected.
Completely unexpected. I'm grateful, and we're eternally grateful. But they were willing to have that conversation.
Well, I think our hesitation is this, that we need more consistency in these kind of conversations, whereas they're very absent because, things do come to light. Things happen, and all things, the judge does what the judge does, and we can talk about justice reform and all that stuff. At the end of the day, it comes down to them having an opportunity to at least plead my case is something that very much does not happen.
And I think the one thing that we can guarantee that whether you were, how old were you when you first came in?
2 months after my 18th birthday.
18 years old, and to the time 20 years later,
51 years old.
Right. One thing we're sure is you're not the same person.
100%.
You can't be. Unless physics and biology changes, we are not the same person.
Even if you wanted to continue to be a shit stick, you're still not the same shit stick.
Exactly.
Right.
So the conversation that guys that are incarcerated don't change, that's not true.
Right.
The discussion, what is the change going to be?
Right.
What can it
Choices.
be? That's what the discussion that I would ask that the Parole Commission, the governor's office, to look at.
Right.
Because we're not debating whether or not there is a change. We're having a discussion what the change is.
Right. And is that something that you feel good about saying, okay, let's give them a shot?
And it's not about dismissing the harm that was caused.
No, of course
it's not about that.
Of course not.
It's about, okay, what do we do now going forward? And if we have that honest conversation and you still choose to believe that the person's still incarcerated, so be it.
Right.
But you have to be willing to have that conversation. People that with life sentences are trying to have that conversation,
and they're just walking into brick walls.
Exactly, because you haven't changed.
Right.
That's the default when no one has changed.
Right.
When you talk about getting the families involved, it's the same thing. I personally don't think we do enough in the area of victim reconciliation.
Right.
Because where they're stuck in that moment of the crime was committed, and all the feelings that go along with that.
100%.
Where as people that are diligently working to change their lives, they don't have an opportunity to see that. Right. And so it's apples and oranges.
It's like time warp.
Right. And so
nothing changed for them.
Exactly. And so that's where I think that we could do a better job of including of getting more information out to the victims of crime. Sure. Because I'm not saying there aren't victims of crime. There are. Of course. And especially if you really expand what it means to be a victim. Right. The community there's been some harm caused. And they have a dog in the fight. They want to make sure that you're coming back okay, at least. Right. Somebody that's actually going to be not breaking down their door and robbing them again. That's all they want. Yeah. They just want to feel safe. Right. And so that somehow, and I think that your podcast is an example of doing those type of things. Right. That we're getting the message out in order to pull the public along with us. Right. To say, this is a journey. It has changed, just like I've changed. And I think their voice is not shared, or their feelings aren't shared as much as it could be. Right. And I agree with that. And so I thought, I'm just, because I seen you after you got out. I think you'd been out, a couple of days or a week? I think it was a week. Oh, at the auction? Yeah. I had no idea you were out. And so I was weird. It's like all of a sudden I saw you and my brain goes, oh, what am I looking at right now? Yeah, people thought I was at a CRC. Yeah, because you're wearing the shorts. I'm like, well, those are commissary shorts. Right. Are you out, or are you just visiting here? Are you like Chris at a CRC? I didn't understand it. And then you said, no, they actually gave me some love and cut my sentence. Right. And I'm like, yeah, they did. And they, wow. Yeah. And like I said, they were willing to have that conversation. And I'm grateful when you talk about, you said earlier about the importance of recognizing the people that are in your life. And do I want to? That's on there. Yeah. I don't make right choices because of the Parole Commission, but I sure honor and I appreciate, I have gratitude that they were willing to have the conversation. Right. So those moments that I'm having what can be described as a hard time, think about them. Oh, I know. They you know how the commutation process works. It's extremely rare that it's rare. I mean, it's a unicorn. That's what I tell people. It's literally just, if you happen to get one, then I don't even know how you did it. I believe the last one I ever heard of was in like 1986 or something like that. Okay. So, and so next thing you know, so now that opens up for me, God's good, and I make no, qualms about it. I couldn't have done my 32 years without God. Sure.
he opens up doors and God bless him. And now all of a sudden your conversation about HIV and those types of things and getting the word out there, he's like, well, let's get you a bigger stage. Let's go ahead and end this chapter and move you to a different chapter.
Sure.
And so boom, now you got this huge situation where you're like, well, geez, I'm going to go ahead and stick with what got me here. And that was Sean and that particular organization. And so I'm curious as to what you're doing today. What do you got going on with these guys? And what is the community? What are my listeners right now? They're like, okay, so tell me a little bit about that. Maybe how do I get involved? I mean, what's that look like for us?
Right. So primarily, so it's interesting that again, a willing partner. My parole officer has been a willing partner.
Nice.
Because with working remote, it requires, or I have the opportunity to travel to other parts of the country to do those type of things.
Right.
So there again, the relationship that I was able to form with IDOC allows the parole officer says, let me know when you get back.
Nice.
And they're really a working relationship. But more specifically, as far as Zero Project, so our ultimate goal is to change or to modernize the statute that's on the books, 39608, which is now a felony, and to work out something that we are more looking at the medical facts, just like the Parole Commission.
With legislation? With
legislation. That's the ultimate goal.
Gotcha.
What Zero Project has taught me is that it's a bigger issue. We have communities that need help, and Zero Project works out to them. So locally, we're really trying to partner with the trans community in order to bring awareness to some of the issues and concerns that we have in that area.
Right.
As well as with people in incarceration.
Okay.
So definitely this year, my focus is going to be more in Idaho is developing more services. And when we say services, oftentimes people think of money right away.
Right.
No, services are just having a place. It's interesting that we're talking here.
Right.
A part of the services, we were going to go to one place, didn't fall through. A service is where we get on the phone and find a place. And I want to thank the folks here at Roots.
Oh, 100%. Thank you.
Allowed us to give us a spot in order to have that conversation.
I think it's a good setup here.
It's a beautiful, beautiful space.
And is all that organic stuff in there? Or?
It is.
Nice.
It is. Then she explains it far better than I do.
So shout out to Roots, everybody.
Yeah. Just off of Chinden.
100%.
Got to swing by.
Yeah.
But so that's part of what Zero is about is connecting people in community to get our needs met.
Right.
And so what that's going to look like legislatively, maybe that looks like more of a town hall. Maybe it looks like, of developing groups.
Good.
That's one of the goals that we have in this area, as well as the stuff legislatively that we're doing more nationally on the national level as well.
Yeah, because you tell me, heck, I'm surprised I even got a chance to sit down with you today because it's like you're like ping, 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 ping. You're always gone.
Well, we're on our Christmas break, so and that's a huge blessing as well.
Sure.
Because once we start working again, it's
all go no quit.
You bet. So there's one of the main projects I'm on. We have a Turnabout magazine that goes to folks inside. So I'm the co-editing that as well.
Okay.
And then also we have the website seroprotect.com where we have more personal stories and a lot of great information on legislation, on what it means to live, to be a person.
So if somebody wants to learn more about these stories, they can go there. Right. What's it called again?
Seroproject.com, SERO.
Okay.
Project.com. And it's the things that we do. It's just I've only been out for a year, and the HIV community is so powerful to me.
Sure.
And growing up in Idaho, with not only being Black and then being diagnosed with HIV, I really felt isolated.
Okay.
What Zero Project has allowed me to do is to connect with people nationally and that born a sense of community. But what's amazing though is those same skills that I learned inside apply out here as well.
I know.
And so if it wasn't for the debate class, if it wasn't for the creative writing class, if it wasn't for intramurals, if it wasn't for being a TA in education, sitting
mentoring,
working, mentoring.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for those opportunities that the prison system gave me, that
things would look different, maybe.
Right, it would be a different challenge.
Sure.
And I'm here to tell guys that their families, folks that are inside, folks that are getting ready to get out, everything in between.
Right, good call.
That there are opportunities to move on with our lives.
And so that would be one of the things I would absolutely, for those of you listening, is that, when you're talking to them on the phone and you're asking them how their day was, ask them what they're doing to get involved in their community.
You bet.
And get ready today. I don't care if you got 5 years left.
Correct.
Let's go.
I don't care if you have 5 months.
No, let's go.
One of the things that stood out to me, and I share with mentees regularly. So I had a great opportunity to work for Mr. Milhoff in education.
Good guy.
And ISCC, they remodeled, they were doing the pre-board they had little rooms just for pre-board.
Right.
And I remember this one pre-board officer, for whatever reason, was calling people down early, and guys were coming down, they're just melting down.
Sure.
They've had the packet, not even touched it. I'm not supposed to go till next week or next month, and just having a hard time. And I remember this is way before commutation. And I remember thinking about that. Man, there's people, I can think of you, I can think of Chris, I can think of a handful of guys who were not even thinking about going to the pro board.
Not at all.
But if they called us down to that office,
ready.
I'm spitting it.
I'm ready.
I'm going to put some kind of plan.
100%.
My belief that everyone has to have that mindset.
Sure.
They can call me right. If they called you right, if they called like Chris right now, he's gonna be ready.
Well, as a coach, I remember you used to tell me, hey, you may not be going in every single play. Be ready when you are.
Exactly.
And so remember that little drill you would have to where you didn't know if you were getting the ball or not, but you had your hands up and you were ready if you did.
Correct.
That's a good drill.
Right.
So that made, hey, once you got hit in that freaking face a couple times with that ball, you knew that you better have your hands up.
Exactly.
So always stay in the preparation.
I never hit anyone with the face with the ball. I want that disclaimer right now.
I don't know. I feel like
but
maybe.
I think sometimes it's misused.
Right.
That in the inside the facility where we say stay ready, so I have to get ready, and it's used in a negative sense.
Sure.
But that's what you're talking about.
It's legit.
Yeah. And so to me, I remember clearly, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about Chris. I was thinking about Ryan.
Sure.
I was like, man, none of us at that time were even considering getting out. But if they called us down right now,
oh, I promise you,
we'd be able to put it. We'd have spit it.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome too. So right now you're doing so much, as you spoke about this, the good things that you're doing now. I'm wondering if people want to try to follow this and they want to get more involved in this, is there some, like, obviously the .com, but is there anything else that you could suggest, or is it just sort of pay attention? And we're going to be doing some things with legislation. I just want to make sure that before we ended up, signing off, I want to make sure that these guys have every opportunity to either connect with you or your organization. Sure.
And I think as far as of course, seroprotect.com, God willing, I'll get a different mindset.
And you have a podcast too, right?
We're actually Zero Project. We're going to do a podcast this year.
Nice.
So definitely stay tuned for that.
Good.
But definitely, as far as the social media presence, I'm old and crusty, so I haven't got into that yet.
See the white hair.
But I anticipate that coming out. But for now, just go seroproject.com.
Gotcha.
And then there's local organizations in Boise as well that we can look at. But more than anything else, believe it or not, just help your neighbor.
Yeah.
Because the chances are your neighbor, that's someone who maybe a person with lived experience.
Right.
Maybe someone with a trans experience.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So just don't go try to join the club. Just be kind.
Yeah, and get out of your own way.
Exactly.
100%. And I sometimes we complicate things, and for doing things like this podcast and stuff, I complicated it to the point where I almost became. I'm like, I'm just not going to do it. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. What if I just did one episode?
Right.
One episode leads to two.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, just like life, just like you taught us, just like, we taught each other, is that take things in small bites and don't become so overwhelmed that you end up doing the fainting goat and you do nothing.
Right.
And so when you're helping others around you, that doesn't mean fix it.
Right.
That means sit in the mud with them maybe. That means have a conversation that actually adds value to the particular situation at hand. And if you don't have the answers, probably you're smart enough to figure out where to go to get them.
And what I keep reminding myself, every day, is that after my morning prayer, that happiness is a choice. For me, it's a choice.
Yep.
For me, the default is misery, being overwhelmed, getting caught up in negative things. That's the default. I mean, I think you talked about fake news. I think our default, especially in society, I'm not saying it is, it feels like everything is more negative, that I'm a victim of ... It's someone else's fault ...
Always.
And so I always remind myself that happiness is a choice. And again, I made a choice to go to prison, right?
Yep.
I can make different choices. I can choose to be happy today.
And add value.
And there's sometimes I choose, I'm just going to sit up and watch Netflix. Yeah. I'm just going to kick back, put my feet up and eat something probably fried and greasy.
Absolutely.
I hope the clinic isn't listening to that.
Yeah, no.
Because I'm really working on my diet.
Yeah.
But all those things are options that we have to do. And then I'll tell you what, that's so for folks that are in a system that's telling us when to eat, when to go to the bathroom, being able to choose even the level of my emotional energy, I'll tell you what, I'll take that every day.
Right on.
You know,
and it's infectious when you're around people that feel like they got it dialed in a little bit. We're always going to be messy. We're humans. You know, life's messy. So, but when they feel like they got it dialed in, it's like you said before, when you're around people that are on the same page, you tend to level up a little bit just by being around them. And that's who I want to surround my life with. That's why you're still in my life. That's why Ryan's still in my life. And all the guys that basically all the mentors are killing it right now.
And that's why I'm always beating the drum for IDOC, because you remember a time where technically you're not allowed to associate with known felons.
This would get me sent back right here.
Right, exactly. Well, it would. You know, and when people heard that, we weren't allowed to talk to known felons. Right. So we couldn't have this conversation.
100%.
And I remember having a conversation. This is quite a few years ago with Amanda Gentry.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? If you imagined at that time, I might have been 10 years or whatever it was, a decent amount of time.
Right.
And I want folks to think of it in this sense. So if I lived in a neighborhood, right, for 10 years, had the neighbor for 10 years, knew all their kids, watched them all grow up.
Right.
And then I go to another city for whatever reason, say my job moves me, and I'm told, oh, by the way, you can never talk to those neighbors again.
That's silly.
How successful would you be?
Yeah. No, and I get that they don't want you to be around people that do drugs.
They don't want you to be around people that are making bad decisions.
Period.
Regardless of the time I've known them.
And do you want to be around those guys anyway?
But especially guys that are still inside, and I am so honored for the opportunity to get to go back inside.
That's cool, huh?
Can I give name shout outs?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love me some Al.
Nice.
Sure. To be able to go back out and just say hello.
Sure.
Those little things help me in my recovery.
And help
my
them.
Parole. Yeah, because that's my friend. We've been around you've been around people for 20 years.
You know it.
That you've gained that in a positive way, that bond.
Yeah.
Why would you want to sever something that works?
No, yeah, I know. And it's crazy too, because, again, IDOC has given us the opportunity to, like today, I go into the farm today at the minimum security prison. I get to go ahead and talk to the guys and gals there and just sort of remind them that they matter and maybe have a conversation about, of all things, today's topic is going to be on happiness. Not the feeling, the choice.
Right.
And that's the topic today.
Exactly.
And the reason I'm taking that topic is because I feel like sometimes people feel like, well, if they don't feel a certain way, then it's not a certain thing. And I'm like, well, that's distorted.
Right.
That's not real.
Right.
Let's I want to make sure you know that.
And you asked earlier before we started about drug addiction or had alcohol. I remember when I was diagnosed, that's when I was really drinking hard because I didn't want to feel anything.
Sure.
And I'll tell you one thing, it worked.
Yeah.
But it also numbed my
short
joy.
term.
It also numbed my joy. You know what I'm saying? It numbed everything.
Yeah.
So now that I'm completely sober, I kind of in an odd way relish the sadness because I'm feeling for a change.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
When you get an opportunity to see something through a perspective, a lens of realism.
I wouldn't saw a certain movie that I won't bring up. Because people start throwing things at me.
Oh, geez.
I didn't enjoy the movie that well.
Huh.
And I remember that she said, well, she honestly saw my discomfort. Do you want to leave? I can tell you're bothered by this. I'm like, nah. As angry and all the emotions that were coming up.
Right.
It's like that sweet smell of being able to feel it. That's important. Because what I realized, feeling all those things, it didn't destroy me.
Right.
That's what we do. We feel with each other. We feel with. That's empathy. We feel with each other.
Right.
And so as miserable as I felt during that movie, it was all right.
And so let that be a parting word is giving guys the opportunity. If you're feeling a certain way, don't let that drive you to bad choices. Let that be something that you're going to be like, I'm going to go ahead and sit in this. Pretty sure I'm going to live.
Right.
And it's going to give me an opportunity to grow and be consistent in saying there's going to be days that suck or I'm going to be uncomfortable and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to live.
Yeah. And component of that, I remember journaling and I changed my verbiage. I do believe words really matter.
Sure.
Especially the words we tell ourselves.
Amen.
And so I stopped saying, oh man, I had a bad day. I don't think I can honestly say I've ever had 24 hours of bad.
Sure.
I've had bad moments.
Yeah.
I've had maybe a bad 6 hours.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Going through the court system, it's a pretty messed up moment.
It really is.
But it's a moment.
Right.
And so cut yourself some break and enjoy the times that are great.
Right.
There's no such thing as a bad day. And finally, I would tell guys that definitely write your life plan in pencil. You know what I mean?
That's cool. That's
because I've learned that
kind of like goals.
Yeah, the year and a half that I've been out, I've had to do a lot of racing. Things change. Especially if
stay flexible.
Yeah, that's the key. not the primary goals, but all those little things, you might want to put pencil in there.
I like it. Don't use a pen.
Exactly, because that makes it permanent. And then I can, about failure.
Yeah.
No, there's no such thing.
And then sometimes the fallback on failure equals, where's the thing at? Where's the thing at that's going to make me feel
better?
Or just numb it, right?
Right, back to your happiness part again. And I think that, again, I want to give you props for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, buddy.
All the folks you're reaching out to. And
100%.
And always just let me know I could be of service.
I know, I like it.
We'll roll with it anytime.
I like that. And that being said, so once again, reach out to this man and, his organization. I feel like it's important that we as a society, as a community, as a nation, learn more about this.
Right.
Because I really do feel like it's something that is kind of like behind the scenes. And a part of this will hopefully push a little bit further.
Sure.
And anytime I can be of service to you and your community and your friends, family, whoever it is, obviously I'm here just like I'm here for you guys.
You bet.
And so, again, I appreciate the heck out of you, buddy. I love you to death. You're awesome.
Anytime you're in town, let me know. And it doesn't have to be this way.
And you can throw a basketball at me.
I would not, for the record, I've never thrown a basketball at anyone.
That's hilarious.
But it's always an honor, and I appreciate all the things that you're doing and all the lives that you're taking. That's something that I've always envisioned you being able to do. Maybe not a podcast,
sure,
but
it's
always
different.
But in some way, reaching out to other folks and then giving back. I think that is the key. You're doing a great job with that.
And I'd push that forward to anybody else that obviously this is an open forum for everybody. So God bless you. I thank you again for joining us on another episode of 32 and Beyond. And just remember, you feel like this particular episode has value, share it. Make sure you hit that follow button. And if you have any questions or you need to talk to this man or whatever, get a hold of me, DM me, and I got you. Just remember that every day is Disneyland, and you're loved, you're cherished, you're beautiful people, and you have value, and God bless. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in to 32 and Beyond. And remember, your past does not define your future. It refines it. We're in this together, building trust, community, and new beginnings. Until next time, stay strong, stay authentic, and keep moving that needle.